Hello, and welcome to Candidates Up Front. This is the public interest election program of Berks Community Television and the League of Women Voters of Berks County. I'm Judith Cranus, a member of the League. Our November 5th general election is coming up, and we will be voting for both state officials and federal officials. The deadline to register is Monday, October 21st. The League is interviewing candidates in contested races, those who wanted to be interviewed. And for each race, the candidates will get the same basic questions and will have the same amount of time to answer them.
Two candidates are competing in the 126th Pennsylvania House District, Democrat Jacqueline Rusnak and Republican James D. Oswald. It's an open seat. There is no incumbent. The district includes Laureldale, Mount Penn, St. Lawrence, Muhlenberg, Lower Alsace, and parts of the city of Reading and Exeter Township. State representatives serve a 2-year term in the state legislature in Harrisburg. They initiate legislation and they vote to create laws. They pass the budget, including taxes and expenditures of the state. They help constituents with issues regarding state government. The salary for a state representative is $106,422 per year, plus benefits and expenses. Please note that the opinions expressed in this interview are those of the candidate and not the opinions of the League of Women Voters or of Berks Community Television. This interview is with Jacqueline Rusnak. Welcome.
Thank you.
Ms. Rusnak, please tell our viewers about yourself and why you are running.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me this evening. My name is Jacqueline Rusnak, and I am running for the state representative seat in the 126th district. I am running as a resident of the district and a lifelong resident of the district. I lived in Muhlenberg my entire life. I've worked in Muhlenberg, I play in Muhlenberg, and I care about the entire district of the 126. So. I'm currently a school teacher. I teach at our local high school, Reading Muhlenberg Career and Technology Center. I'm a dental instructor there. It's a program that I actually grew from the ground up. It had no dental program at the time. I was a dental hygienist. Like I said, I lived and work in Muhlenberg. I was a hygienist for Dr. Zisch for 25 years. Then I switched gears and decided to go into teaching to hopefully inspire the next generation of dental professionals. And now I find myself in this position running to be the next state representative of the 126th district.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
What are the two most compelling issues on which, if elected, you feel that you can make a difference?
Well, there are quite a few issues facing Pennsylvanians this time around, and I'd like to speak to some issues that I have personal experience with. Otherwise, we could be here all night talking about the issues. So one of those issues is properly, fairly, and equitably funding public education. As a high school teacher and as a mom, too, of, a daughter that went through the public education system, I have seen firsthand what happens when schools are not properly funded. That is a responsibility, of the state legislature, and so I feel that it would be helpful to have someone like myself who has experience on the front lines be able to go to Harrisburg and lend my voice to that issue and help hammer out the process, especially since the Supreme Court has now ruled our funding unconstitutional. So that's definitely an issue for me. I know I'm getting the stop sign here, so reproductive rights is also a big issue for me as well. So maybe we could touch on that a little later in the interview.
Sounds fair. Do you believe that Pennsylvania elections are fair?
I do believe Pennsylvania elections are fair, yes.
Will you support the results of the election as certified by the counties?
I certainly will, yes.
And will you support the certified results at all levels of government?
Yes, I will.
What, if anything, would cause you to support the results at one level but not another?
I would have to kind of see, what would transpire after the election would happen. I would not be able to say right now that I would choose one level over another.
Thank you. Both parties say that they're pro-family, but they propose and they vote for very different things. What legislation do you feel is pro-family?
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure what the legislation is that's out there. Like I said, I'm a school teacher. I am a mom. I have my own family. I have my own ideas of what I think, helps families. But as far as specific legislation, I really can't speak to that at this moment.
As an example, I spent a lot of time in Canada. Canada has paid parental leave. They also have programs to support women when they're pregnant as well as after birth. Are those things that you would support?
Oh, for sure. I think that is really important. The family unit is so crucial to the development of the child, and I really see that being in education. And when families are not involved or not being able to be supportive of the child or the student, there are a lot of issues that can arise. So the more time that we could give, especially at a young age, at the very crucial time of development, I think that would be important legislation to support.
Thank you. What specific ideas do you have to increase the supply as well as the quality of affordable housing and to preserve existing affordable housing?
I know that housing is definitely a problem, and we have an issue with homelessness, especially with the youth in the area. So that is something that is definitely on my radar. What we can do exactly in terms of how we can provide more housing and affordable housing, that is something that I would like to get to Harrisburg and speak to the other representatives up there, see what kind of ideas they might have. Along with talking to the constituents in the area as well. I've been knocking doors, and there are some people that have raised that concern for me. So for me, it's just getting out, speaking to people, educating myself on the issue to be able to better bring solutions to the table for that particular problem.
My next question is one that I assume you may have some real feelings about.
Sure.
Our PA Constitution requires the state to provide 50% of the money needed to run our schools. And while the state's increased school funding in the past two budgets, it's still way, way below 50%. This shifts the burden to local property taxes. How would you address this taxing issue?
So this is a tough one, and nobody, really loves taxes, right? It's one of those banes of our existence. However, sitting on a school board, being in a classroom, and being on the front lines of education, I understand that property taxes for us is a really, how can I say this, like a solid way to assure that we're having funding coming into the schools. And I know that people have come up with suggestions for, taxing, some other goods maybe in the state, or, closing some loopholes for some of our wealthiest citizens. Right now, this is a topic that's been kicked around for years, and people have said we're going to eliminate property taxes. I don't know that is that close, much closer to the finish line. But I am certainly willing to look at all avenues of revenue to be able to bring in the funds that we need in order to have quality education for every student here in Pennsylvania.
So would you consider an increase in the income tax, the sales tax, things of that nature?
Yeah, I think, a lot of times people have brought up the idea of, increasing some sales tax on a few things. And I would not be opposed to that. I just think the thing that makes people a little nervous about that is the fact that the economy can change, and what we were bringing in at one point when the economy was humming may kind of fall off if we find ourselves in a little bit of a downturn. So that is something that I'm not opposed to, but would like to look into a little bit more.
Okay. When an assault weapon or large capacity magazine is used in a public mass shooting, nearly 14 times as many people are injured, twice as many people are killed. Our neighboring states, New York, New Jersey, and Maryland, pardon me, all have assault weapons bans. Do you support an assault weapons ban for PA? Why or why not?
I am pro Second Amendment. I will be very honest about that. I grew up in a family of outdoorsmen and have grown up around responsible gun ownership. For me, owning a gun for protection is everyone's right. To be a sportsman with it is a right as well. The assault weapon, I just really question that. I'm not really sure why an average citizen should have a weapon of war that you can take out, several people, in one shot. So that is not something that I am a big fan of, and I would certainly be willing to sit down and have discussions with the people that are in favor of keeping assault weapons. I would want to understand what's their reasoning behind it before I would actually make a decision on that one.
Okay. Pennsylvania doesn't require secure weapon storage. Should we have a law requiring that? And should parents who have not secured their weapons be held accountable for crimes committed by their children? And as you know, that's been an issue in the recent past.
It really has. And again, like I said, I grew up in a responsible household, and the weapons were definitely locked up and not easily accessible. That is the responsibility. That's the responsibility of a gun owner, and I would hope that people would take that seriously and follow through with that. And unfortunately, a lot of the laws that we make are because people don't take their responsibilities seriously and they don't follow through with them. And so I would not be opposed to taking a look and seeing if that would be something that we could have on the books.
Thank you. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act of 2022 provides $50 million in federal grants to states with, quote, red flag warning laws. These laws allow a court to determine if a violent person may own a gun. Such laws are often used in cases of domestic abuse. So should PA have such a law? It could increase our budget for violence prevention programs.
I would say yes to that. I think that there should be some parameters put in place to protect our most vulnerable people in the state, especially in domestic abuse cases. I think that would be a very valuable, thing to have in place to protect domestic abuse victims, as well as our schools as well,
Sure.
Especially coming from being in the classroom, and we hear about it unfortunately on a regular basis. I think that might be something that could help to curtail some of those things.
Thank you. So Berks County is about 50% agricultural. We know the growing seasons have changed. Pennsylvania has been spared the massive destruction of wildfires, but we do have floods, drought, and destructive storms. Should PA do more to protect our economy by doing more to prevent climate change? And what actions do you think that the legislature should or should not take?
Well, we're definitely seeing the effects of climate change, and that is another thing that I would need to just do more research on and see what we could do in Pennsylvania. I know that we are enacting initiatives for people to go out and, I have people coming into my neighborhood all the time, ringing my doorbell, asking me about solar panels, on my roof, along with some other things. And so I just had a gentleman knock on my door the other evening, and I said I would love to sit down with them just to educate myself a little bit more on the pros and cons of that, and see what we could do and how that would make a positive impact on our agricultural system.
Some other areas that people have talked about as being something that could happen in Pennsylvania would be carbon capture programs, doing things like planting more trees, concentrating on livestock and crops that use less water. Do you think that those make some sense to at least
I
look
think
at
that
those?
makes perfect sense. Yeah, I would not be opposed to that at all. We are growing, we are expanding, and we are taking over what used to be farmland or, open fields, and now we are, macadaming them over, and we're starting to see a major problem with that. So planting some trees and having some, more open area for, the water to actually be absorbed instead of run off into somewhere else, I would not be opposed to that idea at all.
Let's talk briefly about fuel, both fossil fuel as well as sustainable fuel. Should our laws and budgets support one more than the other, or both equally?
Well, Pennsylvania, we definitely are known for our fossil fuels, and we are still dependent on them. I believe in sustainable energy as well. So I would say at this point, I think we should, invest in both of them. And until we can figure out, a way to maybe move away from fossil fuels and more into a sustainable type of energy, let's fund both of them.
Some people say that fracking is safe. Some people say it's not. What are your thoughts?
Fracking, that is a big issue. So as long as it can be done safely, and that's a major issue for me. So we've heard people's stories up in northern PA turning their faucets on and, it catching fire. That is not safe. That is not something that I want for any Pennsylvanian. I realize that we need energy. We are, major consumers of energy, and we've got to get it and produce it somehow. So fracking is an option. I realize that fracking is an option. I'm okay as long as the companies that are, doing that are doing it in an ethical manner and in a way that protects the environment and the people that live in the area.
My question here may be longer than your answer, but most Pennsylvania House and Senate seats are won in the spring primary election when Ds and Rs choose their candidates. One big reason is gerrymandering, creating voting districts where one party always wins. Mm-hmm. It's done behind closed doors, rewarding friends, making it harder for enemies. There are 2 House bills in Pennsylvania that would amend our Constitution so that a transparent, independent citizen commission would draw the lines. What are your thoughts about that?
I am 100% for transparency. I think that is very important. And so I would, consider taking a look at that commission and, finding out what their ideas are, and let's see what we can do about it.
Another issue is the closed primary system. As you know, Pennsylvania is one of 9 states where you need either be registered as a D or an R in order to vote in the primary, which leaves over 1 million PA voters out of the mix because they're independents.
Right.
Should that be changed?
That's a really good question. I believe that independents should be able to vote in the primary. It is a big portion of the population that is being left out, and you need to have your voices heard as well. So let's see what we can do to open up the primaries and let everybody who is registered to vote in the state of Pennsylvania have the ability to vote in our primaries.
Bipartisanship and compromise, in some people's minds, are dirty words. They're not. And unfortunately, in our state house, they're rare. Do you intend to increase and improve bipartisanship? And if you do, how are you going to go about it?
That is an awesome question. I am so glad that you asked me that question. And that's one of the things when I am knocking doors and I am speaking to the constituents of the 126, I want you to understand that I am not a politician. I am a dental hygienist by trade and a school teacher currently. And I believe that everybody's opinion should be valued and everybody should be heard. It shouldn't come down to one side's, decisions or another. I want to be able to be the person that can reach across the aisle and work together in order to come up with common sense solutions for the people of Pennsylvania. One of the reasons that I'm running is because of the fact that it drives me crazy that we have people that dig in so hard on one side or the other, and I feel that we are not getting anything accomplished because of the fact that people just don't have the ability to try to find their way to the middle and compromise, a little bit. You're never going to get everything that you want, but hopefully you get what you need. So a little Rolling Stones for anybody out there that goes back that far.
Okay, so we have around 30 seconds left. Is there anything you'd like to say in the way of a closing statement?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for conducting these interviews so that the people in Pennsylvania, or especially in the district that I'm running in, the 126th district, get a chance to see who I am, learn my name, learn some of the things that I am passionate about. And I just want the opportunity to be able to go and represent all the people of the 126th district. I am a registered Democrat, but that does not mean that I cannot understand what the other side of the aisle is looking to accomplish. And I'd love the opportunity to lend my voice to some of the major issues that we're facing here in Pennsylvania today.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your views with us. Viewers, please remember there's another candidate, James Oswald, running. To check your voting status, to go to votepa.gov and be sure to vote on Election Day. Good night, folks.